lounging, son.
All right, welcome back to another episode of Comic Lounge Podcast. My name's Ryan, and as always, I have my co-host, your friendly neighbor, Bot, with me. And for this week's book, we picked Saga of the Swamp Thing, Book 1, by the great Alan Moore, Stephen Bissette, and John Tottleben on art. And this, while it was eventually labeled Vertigo, this actually preceded Vertigo. And I would label it Vertigo because I think because of books like this, because of books like Sandman and Hellblazer, that's why we got Vertigo. That's why the imprint was created. Karen Berger was the master.
A Vertigo book.
Yeah, Karen Berger was the mastermind of Vertigo, and she was the editor on this book. And yeah, I recently got to talk to Stephen Bissette about his time on this, and that was surreal being able to talk to about it because, I mean, we talk about this. We love Swamp Thing here. Yeah. Swamp Thing's one of my favorite characters. I was actually like,
were you fanboy?
I read this. I read this last night. I read all of it last night, and as I was reading it, there was a couple panels that I was looking at, and then I looked down at my arm, and I was trying to figure out if I could fit it, fit that image of Swamp Thing on my DC sleeve. You know, I was like, dude, would that fit? Yeah. Would that look right there? But there's
a couple of panels in here where it's just like some of the most beautiful, like this. This is like easily one of my favorite Swamp Thing panels.
That was one of the ones I was figuring. Like, I'm like, I could probably fit that in here somewhere, you know, because like I don't really want to have a DC character on a different arm. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to have multiple shit going on. Like, if I'm going to do other characters on my, my arm or whatever, my other arm, it's going to be different, like not DC. So I got to fit Swamp Thing in. There's one where he's like this at the end of the issue.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
With the sun in the back. That's the end of the first arc in this.
Yeah, it's right after Anatomy Lesson. Thank you for picking the book. Because even though I had read the Absolute edition not that long ago, after we were done recording, I called my brother and I was like, "Dude, can I borrow your trade so I don't have to? Because I don't really want to have to hold my Absolute edition to read this week, and I want to read it with the old coloring because that's a lot of the issue that people have with these Absolutes is it was recolored. I'll be honest with you, I don't dislike the coloring on the new stuff, but after reading it again, old school, I kind of wish they didn't recolor it. It kind of a little bit takes away from the feels that I get when I read this story.
Well, check it out. So you know how in this it has issue 20 where Alan Moore finishes off the first one, right? I actually have issue 20, like the physical copy of issue 20, the first Alan Moore Swamp Thing. I read that, and I got it recently. I got it maybe like a few months ago. I read that. I don't know where I put it, and I don't want to look for it because it'll take away from the time we have recording. But let me tell you, like right down to the colors and the feel and the yellowness of the page and like just how, like, dude, it was. I felt like a kid, dude. I felt like a kid. Like, it was great. It was definitely a different experience. Like, that's the crazy thing. From reading single issues to reading trade paperbacks to reading digitally, there's always going to be a different experience. And I feel like each experience is well and good. But the thing is, the thing is about these old books that are like literally older, that were around before both you and I. There's like this whole mystique to them. There's like not a mystique, but there's this feeling of nostalgia and there's vintageness that cannot be compared to anything else.
I agree.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I almost ordered a bunch of the back issues. Again, like I almost ordered them at the end of Absolute 2 when I finished that. Then I talked to Stephen Bissette and I added a bunch to my cart on mycomicshop.com. Then I read this and then I started looking again because like I really do. I wouldn't mind maybe not all of it, but definitely like the first like couple arcs. Like from book 1, I wouldn't mind owning those issues, and then that issue that takes place in what is it? Is it in book 2? Where Abby eats the fruit. It's not in this book, but she eats that. I think
that's the middle of book 2. I want to say that's the middle of book 2.
Yeah. So like I really love that issue, and I kind of want to get that one as well. But there's just something about this run that no matter how many times I read it, like I just can't help. I can't just help but just get so happy as I'm reading it. Like I just love it so much. Alan Moore is one of the best writers in comics, hands down. You know what I mean? Like I don't think anybody can kind of argue that. I mean, I guess maybe there's some people that don't like his work, but I don't meet many of them.
Okay, this is what I hear. Okay. So, I mean, obviously, more often than not, I hear great praise from Alan Moore all across the board. But I do know about some people who are like, sometimes his stuff is really extremely long-winded, and like I'll be honest with you, I like Watchmen, but man, is that a chore to get through? It's you know what I mean. Yeah. It's a lot to take in. It's a lot to take in, but it doesn't take away from how good it is. It's just that you really have to plan not to read anything else.
You can't. Yeah. And it's not. You can't read that even in a day. If you sat there like from morning to night reading 12 issues of that, fuck. No, I broke it up into. I think I broke it up into quarters when I read my absolute that I got like this past year, because I'm like, dude, this is just. It's just too much, and you miss stuff if you like try to gloss over things because you've read it multiple times. Like, no, this doesn't feel that way.
This is an easy read. This is an easy read. I mean, the thing is, you don't really have to be too familiar with the character because he kind of rehashes a lot of like origin stuff in here. Like, I mean, obviously, know Dr. Arcane, and, Dr. Arcane is one of the more iconic enemies of Swamp Thing itself. But this, like, even when you read the forward by, is it Len? It's Len, right?
Len Wein. Yeah, the creator.
Len, when you read Len's forward, and he talks about how he spoke to Alan Moore, and Alan Moore was like, ran it by him that he wanted to change some things. Len Wein was like super excited. When you can go to a creator and say, hey, I want to change a couple things. Do you mind? And they agree, and you're excited about these changes, dude. Off top, like I feel like Len already knew it was going to be something special.
Len Wein, I mean, R.I.P. To one of the greatest creators we've ever known. I mean, think about it. He's responsible for two creations that you and I both love: Swamp Thing and Wolverine. Like,
yes, absolutely.
Like that's insane. You know what I mean? Like two really different characters, but amazing and have stood the test of time, right? Yeah. Like have really become popular, and I would even say the public conscious knows Swamp Thing, especially because of the show that they did. What was it on the DC app? But now that's going to be on HBO Max. It's now on CW, and the possibility of a season 2, right? Like,
just as long as they don't get screwed by the state again, dude.
Yeah, I know. But yeah, like, Len Wein, like, blessing this book, like, it's kind of cool to see the creator of the character now become the editor. Or he was the editor, and then Karen Berger, I think, eventually took over. It credits both of them, Karen Berger and Len Wein, as editors of the original series.
Okay.
Both fantastic editors. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, this whole book is just heavy hitter after heavy hitter. Stephen Bissette. I mean, let's just jump into the first arc. Let's jump into Anatomy Lesson, and then I'll talk about his art. Because the art is like, you put a different artist on this, and I think you get a different thing. Like, Alan Moore is a great writer, but it's really the synergy of this entire creative team that made this book so special and what it is. I love that. I kind of wish that issue 20 wasn't in here. Because my old trade that I had, because I used to have it, I got rid of it when I got the Absolute, didn't have 20. It starts right off with Anatomy Lesson, and Swamp Thing is in this cryogenic thing, frozen because
he's in an icebox.
Right, because he's dead. And this rich guy that wants to fucking extract this serum because anybody, if you don't know, which you should, Alec Holland is Swamp Thing, right? He was a scientist. A botanist, and he was in a cabin in the swamp, in the Louisiana swamps. It gets blown up. Somebody puts like dynamite under it there while they're working, and he is on fire, runs into the swamp. He's Swamp Thing. That's the origin that is given to us prior to this run. Now this changes a lot of stuff, and we'll get into that. So this rich guy hires a guy we don't know who he is, right? At first, to kind of figure out how he can get this serum out, right? And
from the corpse of Swamp Thing.
From the corpse of Swamp Thing. It's just a weird take. Like, if this is your first issue, like, jumping in, and that's why I wish 20 wasn't in there, because that first Swamp Thing I read was Swamp Thing 21 in that trade. That was the first Swamp Thing I ever read. And I was like, what the fuck is going on? Like, what is this, dude? We end up learning really quickly that it's the Floronic Man, who I also did not know. Not a huge villain in DC Comics, I would say, but, like, the way he's depicted in here, he's creepy as fuck, right? He's just, like, really weird. And the use of the shadows that Stephen Bissette and John Tottleben use.
And their cross-hatching line work, how it gives depth to everything. Gives depth to everything, especially the Swamp Thing, because, you know, in past iterations of the Swamp Thing, like, you know, they didn't get into, like, real detail of him. I mean, yes, he was a big green dude with vines all over him, but this was taken to another level as far as how he was depicted. Like, you know, he looks, it looks like he's covered in moss. It looks like he's mud and vines, and, you know, as opposed to, like, you know, something kind of humanoid, but it's covered with these things. But this, it looks like he's, like, literally made of these things.
Exactly, yeah. And and what's cool too about the first arc is, like I said, like, the origin has changed. Like, we learn through the Floronic Man experimenting on him, because he himself is a botanist that has mutated his body, but he wants to be connected more to plants, but he's still more connected to his human side. And then as he's, like, researching, he realizes that this isn't Alec Holland. This is the swamp that took, because of that serum that they were working on, mutated and thinks that it's Alec Holland.
Yeah.
Right? And has now taken on the perception of that he's a human that's been turned into a swamp creature, but really it's a swamp creature that is mimicking Alec. And I think that was, like, mind-blowing, right, to read that, and such a huge change to see, dude.
But the beautiful thing about this too is, it's like, I forget what issue it was, but there's a sequence of panels where it's the psyche, where it goes into the psyche, and Swamp Thing is dreaming, right? And in the dream, he's essentially, like, chasing his humanity. And, you know, when we talked about the future state Swamp Thing, how, you know, even in the future he's chasing his humanity. This is where it starts. This is the precursor to that. And, you know, that's all it is. And the thing is, it's so crazy that it's almost hard to believe that it's a plant and not Alec Holland, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Because this is something, you know, it literally has its own consciousness at this point.
Yeah.
The Swamp Thing has its own consciousness. And you know, the fact that it plays with the idea that it's not Alec Holland, it's just so. First off, Alan Moore, how do you know that a plant can do that? Because what do they say? It's like worms or something?
Yeah, planarian worm, I think is what it's called.
Yeah, the planarian worm, where it consumes whatever it consumes, and then it gains its memory. Like, you know, what?
I mean, it's fucking genius. I mean, from the organs, right? When he's, like, harvesting the organs out, he's like, but they don't even function. Yeah. They're just, like, they literally are, they look the same, but they don't function. And that's, dude, I mean, it's just crazy. Because, like, again, we were talking about in the Future State Swamp Thing, how he's playing with that, like, with the organs, and Swamp Thing has created these swamp people, but these organs do work. And these organs do function.
But they function differently. They're actually given meaning, how it's like, oh, it's these lungs turn oxygen into water, and water that glows. You know, it's crazy. What? Mm-hmm. Like, you can tell that Ram V is a fan of this. You know what I mean?
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
You know what I mean? But I mean, honestly, I can give this to anyone that can be a fan of it. Like Jen, we love her to death, but she hates superhero stories. But she gave this a 5 out of 5 stars on her Goodreads.
I know. I saw that when I was clicking read. I was like, Jen read this? Oh, look at the fuck! Like, I'm gonna have to talk to her about that, because I think Swamp Thing is something that bridges the gap between indie and superhero stuff. Because while it does have the Justice League make an appearance in here, it's briefly, right?
And like, it's not even like the Justice League are, like, you know, helping. They're just kind of
They're there.
You know what I mean? Then that's the thing. That's the thing about Swamp Thing that I've always liked. It's like, and they mention it in this, how, you know, the Justice League is looking after New York, looking after Metropolis, looking after Atlantis, but who's looking at LaCroix, Louisiana?
No one.
No one. But Swampy is.
Yeah.
You know, and that's kind of like what I've always liked. Is like, you know, there's an aspect of what he protects and what this definitely gives definition to like what the green is. If you have seen Swamp Thing in any of the more recent comics and you're talking about the green, and like, or even seen that the Justice League Dark animated movie where he talks about the green, this gives definition to the green and the interconnectivity of it all. And it's not just, you know, the plants, it's everything that coexists with plants. Like
dude.
Like the birds and the worms and the alligators, and like, you know, he like, you want to talk about like tree hugger. This is the ultimate tree hugger right here.
Yeah. Like, and it's interesting because he doesn't like actually mention it as the green, but this is like, now knowing what the green is, right? You see it when you go back and read it. You're like, oh, this is like, he was building this out. He just didn't really have, I would say, a name for it or a definitive thing of what it entailed, right? We do see it because a Floronic Man, with his experimentations, has now connected himself into the green through eating that fruit that I talked about, right? Off of Alec's body, because as Alec escapes, he like comes out of that cryogenic thing, he sheds like the dead leaves almost, right? The dead skin. And as he's like chasing his humanity, he's like distraught, so he just lays down in the swamp, and now his like is like forming into the ground almost, like he's like things are growing off him, right? And that's where because we haven't really talked about Abigail, who is a huge character in Swamp Thing lore, but she who's married to like this other guy is looking for Alec and finds him and is like, she's distraught, like what happened, like why is he like this? And seeing you know, Floronic Man, like he sprays his skin like with shit to kind of like look human, and he makes his explanations to her about, you know, Alec and how Alec isn't human. It's like seeing the green through Floronic Man's eyes first, right? Because he eats that and then he's connected and he sees all this shit and it fucking drives him insane to where he like takes over LaCroix, Louisiana, like you said, and just starts burning shit down, just fucking like torching everything.
Well, it's crazy how he does it too, because he basically encapsulates like everyone's house in plants, and then the plants, like the house plants inside their house, start over oxygenating. And then as soon as something gets lit, like dude, it, you know, pure oxygen is the most flammable thing on the planet, and you know, he plays on that because, like, you know, this whole cycle of life that plants and humans and meat, how they coexist, it's like, it's so well executed in this. It's hard to believe that, like, you know, the time period in which this was written, it was like, it's far back, because this feels like something that you can read now, and it feels like a modern, it feels like the epitome of modern comics, you know what I mean?
It's timeless.
Yeah, exactly. It's a timeless comic, and everything about it is just so good. And the thing is, it just gets better.
It does. Every time I read it, I like it more. Like, he just really makes this Swamp Thing such a deep and rich character. Like we talked about, like how Ram V really captured the somberness of Swamp Thing.
Yeah.
There's just so many moments in here, just listening to Swamp Thing talk or his inner dialogue, where you're just like, man, this character is just so interesting and has so many different layers to him. And then dealing with the fact that, like, oh, so I'm not human, right? I'm
then
just
what
a
am I?
Yeah, like, who am I? What am I? And he's like, and there's a page where like Abigail, or he tells Abigail that he stops breathing because he doesn't need to breathe. And she's like, well, isn't that weird? And he's like, you really don't realize how much effort it takes to breathe. And I'm just like,
when I read that,
I
read that, I literally like started paying attention to breathing. I'm like, I'm actually thinking about this. Like,
yeah, I know. I stopped breathing for a second. I was like, how much effort is it really? I held my breath for a second. I was like, holy shit! Like, there's like, it's just little things like that Alan Moore puts in his script. I mean, he's so brilliant, and I really want like a manuscript of this trade, like, because like, I mean, it's common knowledge. He writes really lengthy scripts, very descriptive, right? And Stephen Bissette and John Tottleben like execute these scripts to perfection. I can only imagine the direction Alan Moore is giving them, but also the freedom that he gives them as artists to kind of do what they do. And like you've said, like the design of Swamp Thing is way more detailed than any Swamp Thing I think that preceded it. The close-ups of him, like the panels like you were showing me earlier of just like his face and the red in his eye. It's so powerful, and the way they really lean into the horror aspects of the book, I really appreciate. But whether it's in the first arc or in the second arc where we get Demon, Etrigan the Demon, right? Like
a lot of Etrigan this week.
Yeah, a lot of Etrigan. Etrigan is just fucking. He's never been creepier. I don't think I've ever seen him drawn the way he's drawn here ever again. No. Like the second arc too is just, building. Like I really like the first arc the best. I'm not saying I don't like the second arc, but the second arc is I would say is a little bit even more into the horror aspect, because we got Etrigan the Demon. We had this Monkey King demon.
Yeah, that was a little horrifying when you think about it. Like a little monkey king fear monster that feeds on fear and just gets bigger and bigger, and then freaking all of a sudden you have it fighting both Etrigan and the Swamp Thing. Dude, that's like, remember when I told you if there's not a splash page with like freaking Swamp Thing fighting a big ass monster, it's not a Swamp Thing book. Like this is just packed full of it,
Yeah, and like fleshing out more of Abigail's character and her not outlook, but the way she's perceiving Swamp Thing and and building out the relationship that becomes hugely significant moving forward, and kind of what her husband is doing, and that dude's fucking creepy as fuck and weird. And we learn that Abigail is an Arcane also, right? Yeah. One of Alec Holland's mortal enemies. Like I would say his Joker. I would basically say him, right? And
in the prior step before this, like the relationship between Alec and Arcane, like their relationship. I mean, this is why I kind of felt like issue 20 was like was a great one, because it kind of like talked about how Swamp Thing is a monster, but he wanted to become human, whereas Arcane was a human, wanted to become a monster. I think that relationship between the two and how it plays into what Abigail becomes is fantastic.
Yeah. Oh, agreed. And you talked about how the green and is mentioned more, especially in current stuff, and like when Scott Snyder and Jeff Lemire expanded on that concept with the green and the red and the rot. Like
the rot, dude. Like
that shit is so dope. We wouldn't have any of that without Alan Moore's fucking brilliant like concepts that he introduces in this book. And it's like, it's crazy to think, like you said, that this came out when it did in '84. What other comic book at that time was like this? I can't name many. This is so far ahead of its time and so unlike anything else coming out. And to hear that while it did sell really well, it never was like a high seller, like that's crazy to me.
It's baffling.
You know what I mean?
It's baffling.
It blows my mind, because this, I think, is considered, while Watchmen is considered one of the greatest comics of all time, I think it's easier to say that because it's a 12-issue series. But if you had to ask me what my favorite Alan Moore work is, it's going to be Swamp Thing every time. It doesn't compare. Like, I can't even say, like, it's easy for me to say. You ask me favorite Alan Moore, it's Swamp Thing. Like, I don't even second guess it. I'm like, oh, well, Watchmen sometime. No, like, this to me is Alan Moore's best work. You know what I mean?
No, I 100% agree. Because, well, like we said earlier on in the beginning of this, it's an easy read. It's not... he provides everything you need to know about said character, but at the same time recreating it. I mean, I would have to 100% agree with you. Like like we say a million times over about how much we love Swampy around here. Like this is easily my favorite Alan Moore book.
And Watchmen, it's a deconstruction of the superhero genre, but like the human condition and like what it means to feel and be human. That's in this. Yeah. That's deep, dude.
And everything about this is deep. Even right down to the end when Swampy is having a conversation with the autistic kid.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Oh, sometimes monsters are, sometimes monsters are afraid too. He's like, yeah, I suppose they are.
Yeah, I know. I love that. And like, how it ends the trade. Yeah.
There's just so much about this where it's just like, I don't care. Like Swamp Thing is quite possibly like the most human character in the DC universe because of his chasing for humanity, his not wanting to be a monster, whereas like you have a character like Batman where he wants to be something more than a man, where he wants to be a symbol, and then you have Superman where he's not even human. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But this is like literally the epitome of like what a humanized character can be.
Yeah.
Especially when you look at the exterior. When you look at the exterior of Swamp Thing, you see this massive, hulking green mass of monster of something that like they even say a mockery of a man, you know. But he's more human than anything any character I've ever read, easily, and like going into the future state stuff, how he's literally scouring the earth for humans and doing the whole metaphorical chase for humanity, even in the distant future where humans no longer are almost extinct. He's still chasing that humanity, and I guess you can turn that into a metaphor where pretty much everyone is still chasing their humanity. Everyone's still just trying to be a good person, and that's the universal thing about Swamp Thing that I love so much. It's just you would never expect to relate to a monster. This is kind of like this is Alan Moore's Frankenstein,
Yep.
And
I agree.
it's fantastic. It's there's nothing more that I can say to give it any more high praise. Like this is like I have a lot of favorite comics, but this is my favorite comic of all time.
Okay. All right. Yeah. I don't think I could ever answer that question. Favorite comic book of all time. That's tough.
This is my favorite. It goes, and it's funny. Like I'm a big Marvel head, but like in my top 3, it's 2 DC titles.
Is one of them Dark Knight Returns?
Oh shit! Then all 3. It's all 3. My top 3 are all DC titles. It's like Swamp Thing, Dark Knight Returns, and Sandman.
That's crazy to hear that from you, especially because I know you are more of a Marvel fan.
I'm definitely more of a Marvel fan, but I mean,
look at who you just named, though. Look at who you just named: Alan Moore, Frank Miller, and Neil Gaiman. So it's like, I mean, how do you like top that? Really,
Yeah, you can't.
Yeah, I mean, I think this run, it's just especially every time I read it, it pisses me off that DC fucked up with Alan Moore, because what else would we have gotten from him at DC if they didn't screw him over on Watchmen? You know what I mean?
Alan Moore, dead man.
Like he was going to that'd be cool. He was gonna write, like he had this whole thing like planned out. Like you can find it online called Twilight of the Superheroes. And it's like 40 pages of his like proposal for this series. I haven't read it all. I've scanned it because like I don't want to like read it on the screen. I want to print it out and read it, but
I'm gonna look that shit up right
just
now.
So
you're sitting here fucking around.
Yeah, just so much great stories that could have come. Like you read Superman, Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow, right? Like
that was good.
Two issues that he did, amazing, right? Like, and he did a Supreme story, with Image with Rob Liefeld's character Supreme.
Mm-hmm.
That essentially could have been a Superman story, right? Prometheus, which I have not read yet. I just got the first hardcover of. That's his Wonder Woman. Like, that's what Nick said. Like, I got Prometheus book 1 and I got Wonder Woman Dead Earth this week at work. And he's like, oh, you're really all Wonder Womaned out. And I was like, what? He's like, because that's essentially like Alan Moore's version of Wonder Woman. And I was like, oh, yeah, I didn't even think about it in that way. It's just the possibilities of what we could have got, based on like his take on, like, what if he did an Etrigan book, right?
Yeah.
What if he eventually would have wrote a Constantine book? Like, there's just so much we could have got.
Well, technically, it could be argued that Constantine is Alan Moore's character.
Like, I mean, it is.
You know what I mean?
He created him in Swamp Thing.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's book 2 or it's book 3, but he did create. John Constantine was created by Alan Moore. Like, that's his character. Oh man, I love.
You know, it's great. I kind of feel like Alan Moore put a lot of himself into Constantine, where you kind of see like the snarky remarks and the general like pessimism of the world.
Yeah. And I think a lot of the design, if I remember correctly, was kind of based on Sting. Is that true? I think that might be true.
I'm gonna have to look that up, but I mean,
I think it might be. I think I've read that somewhere. I mean, I could be wrong, but I mean, I don't even think we could go really deep, analyze this even further, but I don't think you can truly verbalize this book unless you experience it firsthand. I think that it is one of the greatest comic books of all time. It's definitely in my top. I'll say top 10 because it's I can't pick a favorite book, but it's timeless. It's unlike any mainstream comic book ever created. Because I don't think I don't consider I wouldn't even consider Watchmen mainstream. Like, or when I say mainstream, I mean like a DC or Marvel book, because those are original characters. So if, let's say, like it was created now, that wouldn't even be a DC or Marvel. That would have been like a creator-owned book, right? Like technically it is kind of creator-owned, but Swamp Thing from a corporate-owned character, this is the best that we'll ever see. I don't think we'll ever see something like this again.
Yeah, and the thing is like writers for years afterwards and for years to come will always refer back to this.
Oh, always. Yeah.
Always. This is the blueprint of writing. This is what you extract from. It's kind of funny because the Floridian man was trying to extract the recipe to create something like Swamp Thing, and you kind of use that as, you want to write Swamp Thing, you extract from Alan Moore's Swamp Thing. It's great, dude. It's such a good book.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think it's safe to say we both highly recommend this book to anybody that hasn't already read it. If you have read it, read it again.
And also, this goes for people who also aren't into superhero books, who are into this isn't a DC book, your average DC book. This is something beyond. The writing in this is like you said, it's timeless and beyond its time. Like like stuff in the 80s. There wasn't anything in the 80s like this ever.
No, I mean, because dealing with just like how we as humans treat the earth, you know what I mean? Like that's in there and that's still prevalent today. So, I mean, it's a perfect comic. It's just perfect, I think. I don't think there's nothing wrong with this book. I could never give this anything less than a 10 out of 10, 5 out of 5. You know what I mean?
Yeah, agreed. I'm actually gonna read volume 2 tonight. I'm gonna read book 2 tonight. Like that's how this is what happens. You read one, you got to read others, dude.
Yeah. If I hadn't just read essentially it's the first 4 books within the past year, I would probably read it again. But I kind of want to give myself a little break, and then I'm gonna read book 1 again, and I'll go through the whole series because I'm still waiting for the absolute 3. So I haven't read the conclusion, and I don't think I've ever actually read the conclusion to his run. I've never read book 5 and 6. Yeah, I mean, again, I love it. Go check it out if you haven't, and that's all I got for Swampy.
That's all I got for Swampy. Like
before we talk,
how do I not have a Swamp Thing shirt?
I don't either. But all I could do was wear this green shirt, so that's the best. That's the best I could do. I actually, and another thing, I told you I was talking about where could I fit this tattoo on my arm. I also was like, I need to make a Swamp Thing shirt. I'm just gonna fucking get it screen printed. I don't think they make any good Swamp Thing shirts, so I think there's an image in the back of book 1, the Michael Zulli art that was used for the trade paperback. It's like painted.
Yeah.
I want to.
Yeah.
I want to scan that in and then put it on a shirt like this color green. You know what I mean? Yeah. I think that would be pretty dope. So if I get one made, I think those Michael Zulli Swamp Thing covers are actually like some of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. Oh, they're exquisite, dude. Exquisite. before we talk about the books we're excited for next week, everyone listening, next week is another Fables episode. We're going to be talking about Fables Volume 13 and 14. If you're following along with us, I know that it's probably a little hard to keep up with us at this point since we're doing 2 a week and we're pretty far in. I think the second compendium's also been announced. So if you're having a hard time finding Fables and you haven't read it yet, the first compendium's available, second one's coming out, and I know the third one has been solicited. So definitely pick up the book, follow along with us, man, because
it's been really fun.
We're getting towards the end. We're in the end game now. So
we're in the end game now.
Yeah. So you probably noticed we haven't mentioned WandaVision on here. We will talk about it. We're going to split it up. We're going to talk about the first half of the season, and we'll do an episode on that, and then the second half of the season.
Did you watch it, by the way?
I watched both. Yeah.
Okay. Because I didn't want anything to get ruined. I started watching it at midnight, so I watched the first episode, and I saw like the beginning of the second episode, and I fell asleep. But I'm gonna watch the second episode probably tonight. But I mean,
it's something I feel like you need to watch more than
in its
once.
Entirety.
In its entirety and more than once, because at first I was like, I see what they're going for. If they only released the first episode, I think that would have been a mistake.
Yeah.
Because the way the first episode ends, I think you kind of need the second. Like, it should have just been either they should have done what they did, which is release both episodes together, or it should have just been one episode. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
But again, I don't know how
an hour-long episode.
But yeah, we'll talk about it because there's a lot to break down with that. So I think it's better if we do what we discussed. You know what I mean? Like, we'll split them up into 2 episodes.
Agreed.
But before we get out of here, let's talk about what we're excited for next week. On our Future State episode, we talked about the Future State books and which ones we're excited for. I've already read them all. I won't tell you which ones were the best. I'll save that for next week. But they were pretty good. And I also read, which I would have been excited for if I didn't already read it, Batman Catwoman #2 is out this week. That was pretty fucking good. Clayman the Goat on art.
The Goat.
Phenomenal.
Jim Lee. I heard someone call him Jim Lee 5.0.
Jim Lee 5G. That's what he is.
Jim Lee 5G.
Yeah, 5th generation.
Oh yeah, I mean he's great. Like,
yeah,
it's great. I mean, I can't wait. I can't wait for Batcat. I mean, that's gonna be a good one. King in Black 3. That's gonna be a big one.
Oh right.
I know you're not reading it, but Rorschach 4. I'm pretty excited. It's honestly after issue 3, I was sold. Philadelphia 12. I mean, I've been sticking with Philadelphia. It's been awesome.
Yeah.
Rodney Barnes finally starting his own publishing company.
Yeah, so he's taking it from Image. He's taking Philadelphia from Image. It's going to start coming out from his own company, which is kind of cool. Good for him. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's fantastic. And the fact that he can do that just goes to show you how awesome Image is about things like that.
Yeah.
And in Philadelphia, like it's been.
I like the first volume. I haven't read the second yet. Yeah, I'm waiting for the trade. It's just easier to wait for the trade for me because I read so much shit, you know.
Right. Exactly. But yeah, that's pretty much it.
Yeah, and then a new issue of Ninja Turtles coming out, which I'm always down for. And I kind of want to check out the new Iron Fist book. I love Iron Fist. It's this week, yeah. So
what? It is.
Yeah. So Iron Fist, like, for me, it's like the Brubaker Fraction stuff. Like, I hold that in such high regard. And then you have the Dwayne Swarzinski that preceded that came out after that.
Yeah.
That run of Immortal Iron Fist is my favorite Iron Fist stuff. So, like, anything after that, the last time I liked it was when Carrie Andrews wrote and drew his 12-issue series. That was really dope. So I'm skeptical on this one, but we'll see. I'm definitely going to read it. And, Future State stuff. That's pretty much it for me. All right, cool. All right, well, if you're not already following us, follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at The Comic Lounge. You can follow Dylan at The Dillbot on Instagram. Make sure you throw your comments or suggestions down below, or you can also email us at thecomicloungepod@gmail.com, and make sure you like, follow, and subscribe to the YouTube channel, and hit the bell icon so you're notified every time a new vid goes up. And on that note, We're out.
Later, buds.